Andy Johnson, we are looking at sounder-outer research. Now, despite a wealth of research data from a variety of areas supporting a psycholinguistic model or a neurocognitive model of reading, there's still many researchers who choose to understand reading and the reading process only in terms of the phonological processing model. I call these people sounder-outers. Andy Johnson, we are looking at sounder-outer research. Despite a wealth of research data from a wide variety of areas supporting a psycholinguistic model of reading, sometimes called a neurocognitive model of reading, there are still many researchers in reading who choose to understand the reading process only in terms of the phonological processing model. I call these people sounder-outers. The neurocognitive model says that reading is creating meaning with print, not sounding out words. And when we recognize words during the process of creating meaning with print, we use semantic, syntactic, and phonological cueing systems to recognize words. Now, the sounder-outers, they design research studies to examine the effectiveness of sounding out words, and they tend to find what they look for. Their findings indicate that sounding out word instruction is effective in helping students to sound out words. Now, the typical study goes like this, and I am purposely exaggerating this to make a point, but a treatment group is given intensive sounding out word instruction, such as Orton-Gillingham or the Wilson reading system or some other skills-based phonics-only program. A control group does not receive any sounding out word instruction. On post-treatment sounding out word measures, imagine that the treatment group scores higher, significantly higher, than the control group on sounding out measures. Typical study number 2, treatment group is given intensive sounding out word instruction. A comparison group receives nothing or less than nothing. Now, often whole language teachers are mischaracterized here and given some inferior method of instruction. Now, on post-treatment measures, something always scores higher than nothing or less than nothing. So often, it's not the treatment, rather it's the time immersed in reading-related tasks that results in the differences in scores. So the question is, would time spent reading produce the same results as this treatment, this sounding out word instruction? Now, typical study number 3, students are pulled out of their normal classroom and given extensive and intensive one-on-one sounding out word instruction. Usually it's by a specially trained research assistant. And the results indicate after several weeks of intensive sounding out word instruction, the post-treatment sounding out word measures given, these students have made significant gains in their ability to sound out words. Sometimes these are compared to a control group. Now, these studies meet all the requirements of scientifically based research. And you can stop the video and look at the requirements of scientifically based research in education. These are what it must be. And since these studies meets all the requirements of scientifically based research or scientifically based reading research, sounding out word instruction is said to be an evidence-based teaching strategy, a validated teaching practice, or scientifically based reading instruction. Of course, I say pish posh. That tells the story, just part of the story, but not the complete story. Can anything be said to be truly scientific that ignores a whole wealth of data, that chooses not to see? Now, understanding reading instruction, the reading process using only the very narrow peephole of experimental research will not give you the complete picture. Experimental research is necessary, but far from sufficient. This narrow peephole using only experimental research ignores findings, a wealth of findings from qualitative, descriptive, and naturalistic research. It also ignores findings from other areas: linguistics, eye movement, miscue analysis, cognitive psychology, and neuroscience, to name just a few. So what happens next? Oh, I've seen this movie before. Commercial sounding out word programs are designed based on this sounding out word research, and research based is stamped on the side of the box. Schools buy these expensive sounding out word programs, and teachers are then required to teach the sounding out word programs with fidelity. That means they are to follow the directions exactly. They are required. They must follow the recipe exactly as the designers of the program wrote them and described them. But wait, here's the thing. Research based on a false premise will always create misleading results. And what's the false premise? That reading is simply sounding out words. The correct premise is reading is creating meaning with print. So here's some of the research questions rarely considered by the sounder outers. Does sounding out word instruction enhance or impede students' ability to create meaning with print? Create meaning, not sounding out words. Is sounding out word instruction more effective than meaning-based instruction in helping students create meaning? That's what reading is. When comparisons are made with comparable groups and comparable teaching, can you say with any certainty that sounding out word instruction is the most effective form of instruction? To use in terms of long-term effectiveness, not just bumps on a sounding out word measure, but long-term effectiveness on comprehension, word identification, fluency, vocabulary, and or voluntary reading. Does sounding out word instruction enhance students' motivation to read? All things to consider.